Hey, what's up guys? Thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to be learning about linear functions. Now my goal is going to be to break this thing down into 3 distinct lessons. So hopefully, if I do a pretty good job, this lesson will be fairly easy for you to understand. But either way, sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride because it's about to go down. What up, what up? Welcome to my house. I am your teacher and facilitator, the math professor. And do you smell that? Do you smell that? Yeah, that is the sweet, succulent smell of my first episode. Y'all, I am so excited about this. I just know that we're gonna get a lot of information out. My goal is to teach and not make this thing difficult. So hopefully you enjoy it. Now let's get back to what we came here for. Today's lesson is going to be on linear functions with a special emphasis on input and output values. Now before I move any further, it is very important that we sit back and we determine or identify the vocabulary because we got to understand the lingo. We got to understand what is being asked of us whenever we come across a question. So real quickly, let's talk about what a function, what a input or output value is. A function is a relationship that pairs each input value to exactly one output value. Now, in a relationship, there are 2 values, independent and dependent values, where your dependent value depends on the independent value. Now I'm going to break that down a little bit, but again, I think you're beginning to understand why it's so important that we understand the lingo. It's kind of like watching a soccer game, but you don't really know what the commentator's saying. Like this.
El pase largo, escorado a la banda, pegado a la línea de cal Ronaldinho. ¡Oh, madre mía, la que acaba de... Impresionante el pase para Larson Pinto! Lo que acaba de hacer Ronaldinho, perdónenme, hay que marcarlo. Es absolutamente de mala.
Anyways, to further explain input and output values, I have an example. So in this jar, I have a couple cups of the Country Time lemonade. And in this bottle, I have some water. Now, input values are very important because they seem to control whatever scenario we may be looking at. So in this particular case, I'm thirsty and I want lemonade, but I'm not going to be able to get that lemonade until I add water into this mix. Now, unless something happens, if I choose not to add the water to this mix, then I'm never going to get lemonade. So right now, this bottle with the water has all the control. Okay, it can choose when I get lemonade, how much lemonade I get, and things of that nature. So, for example, I can choose to input 1 drop, and as you can see, I still don't have lemonade. I can go with 2 drops. So you see that I'm inputting 2 drops. Again, still don't have lemonade. However, I'm noticing that the Country Time lemonade is beginning to clump up. So even though I don't have lemonade, as I input some of these values, something is happening inside of this jar. Okay, so what the Country Time lemonade powder is dependent upon what this water is going to do to it when I pour it in. So again, that's why this is my input, also known as the independent value, because it doesn't depend on anything. It's controlling everything. And this Country Time lemonade will be considered my output or dependent value because obviously it's depending on this bottle. So now I'm ready for my lemonade. I'm gonna do this whole thing right quick. Voila, yeah. Let me get my mix in. I just want me some lemonade. As you can see, now I have some highly concentrate lemonade that is extremely sweet. I'm not drinking it, but the point of the matter is real simple. Input values control. They are what set the tone in the example of the question that we're looking at. And the control can be specific by 1 drop, 2 drop, 3 drops, or it could be we poured the entire cup in there. However, until we do something with our input value, nothing happens with our output value. Hopefully that made sense. Let's dive into some real examples. The table shows the relationship between the number of photos, X, you take and the amount of memory, Y, in megabytes, left on your camera's memory chip. Is the relationship a linear function? So when we take a look at the table, we notice that X is represented as the number of photos and Y is the memory or megabytes left on the camera's chip. And notice with that first row, if you don't take any pictures, you have all the memory that's inside of that camera's chip. In this case, it's 512 megabytes. But once you start taking pictures, let's say we take 1 picture, now we're down to 509 megabytes. You take 2 pictures, now you're down to 506 megabytes. And if you take 3 pictures, you're down to 503 megabytes. So notice how as you take more pictures, you lose more space, which makes sense. Everybody can understand that. If you have a cell phone and you take a lot of pictures on your cell phone, you tend to not have a lot of space in your cell phone's memory. So in this particular case, we notice that change. I also want you to pay attention to the pattern. Notice like there's a pattern that we can see here with the number of photos that we're taking. It seems like we're taking the number of photos in increments of 1. So we went from 0 to 3 photos, and we obviously know the next pattern is that you're going to take 4 photos, or maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, whatever the case may have you. But there's also a pattern that we're noticing with the megabytes. As we lose space, we're losing space in increments of what seems to be 3. So from 512 to 509 seems like we subtracted 3. From 509 to 506 seems like we subtracted 3 as well. And then from 506 to 503 it seems like we're still kind of on this pattern of subtracting 3. Keep that in mind, because when we talk about it in our next lesson, it's going to make a lot of sense. But the one thing I want you to keep in mind is the fact that unless I take a photo, I don't lose any space. So clearly my input value is controlling everything. In this case, it's taking the photo is the control. If I don't take the photo, I don't lose any space. All right, hope that helps. Guys, catch you on the flip side. I hope you really enjoyed it. It was fun. See you next time.